Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that might sting a little, but it'll save you years of frustration. Just because you have a plan doesn't mean it's God's plan. And even if it is God's plan, that doesn't mean he's going to do it your way or on your timeline. We live in this fast-paced world where we want everything yesterday. Fast food, fast internet, fast results, fast fixes. But God, oh, he doesn't do fast just because you're in a hurry. He does right. He does perfect timing. And let me tell you, his way may take longer, but it always works better. See, we get ourselves into a mess because we think we know what we're doing. We get a little idea, and we run off like a kid who just learned how to ride a bike with no training wheels. I got it, God, thanks, but I can take it from here. And you know what usually happens. Crash, burn, skin, knees, and busted pride. And then we come crawling back saying, Lord, I don't know, what happened. Well, you didn't ask him to lead. You asked him to follow your plan. That's not how it works. I used to get so frustrated when things didn't move as fast as I wanted. I'd pray and say, God, why is this taking so long? And you know what I've learned over the years? Delays are not denials. Sometimes God is working behind the scenes, doing a whole lot more than we realize. He's not just preparing the destination, he's preparing you. He cares more about your character than your comfort. He's not in a rush to give you something you're not mature enough to handle. Think about the Israelites. God could have taken them the short way to the promised land, but he didn't. Why? Because they weren't ready. They had Egypt in their minds and in their hearts. He had to take them the long way so he could work some stuff out of them before he brought them into the blessing. Some of us are in that same place. We want the blessing, but we don't want the journey. We want the results, but we don't want the refinement. Let me help you. There's no shortcut to God's best. His process is part of the promise. And I get it, waiting is hard, especially when you see other people moving faster. You're thinking, why is she getting promoted? Why is he getting married? Why is their ministry growing? And mine feels like it's stuck in neutral. But listen, comparison is a thief. It'll rob you of your peace. Just because someone else's journey looks fast doesn't mean it's fruitful. There's a difference between movement and progress. Don't assume that just because they got there quicker, they got there better. You don't know what they skipped. You don't know what corners they cut. But God doesn't cut corners. He builds foundations. Sometimes you think God's being slow, but what he's really being is thorough. You're asking him for a microwave miracle, and he's cooking a crockpot blessing. And yeah, crockpots take time, but baby, the flavor's in the simmer. God's developing things in you. Patience, endurance, wisdom, trust, things you need for the next level. Because what goes nesting if you don't have the maturity to handle it? God's not interested in just giving you things. He's interested in growing you into the person who can carry the things well. Let me also say this, sometimes God delays things because we're not ready to obey yet. We still want control. We still want options. We still want plan B, C, and D in case he doesn't come through the way we think he should. But faith means letting go of the wheel and saying, all right, Lord, I trust you even when I don't get it. I trust you even when it's slow. I trust you even when everybody else seems ahead. Because let's be honest, if God gave us some of the things we begged him for back when we begged him, they would have destroyed us. We would have mishandled the blessing or turned it into an idol or made a complete mess out of it. But in his mercy, he said no, or not yet. And that no saved our life, that not yet protected our future. And here's what I've found when you finally get to the thing God's been preparing for you. And the thing he's been preparing you for will be so sweet, so right, so peaceful that you'll forget how long it took. You'll stop complaining about the wait because you'll realize it was never just about the destination. It was about the transformation. Let's be real, we have all made decisions without praying first. We've all jumped into things because they felt right, looked good, or seemed logical. And let's be honest, sometimes we didn't even want to ask God what he thought because we were afraid he'd say no. We didn't want to wait. We didn't want to change our plans. We wanted what we wanted, and we wanted it now. So we didn't ask, we just acted. And then when it all blew up in our face, we ran back to God crying, why did this happen? Well, it happened because we made the decision and then informed God like he was supposed to sign off on it after the fact. You know, I used to think I was being smart by figuring things out on my own. I thought I had good instincts. I had experience, I had knowledge. I mean, I had it all planned out, right? But here's the truth. Your experience can't outsmart God's wisdom. Your education, your emotions, your gut feelings, none of it replaces the leading of the Holy Spirit. And if you keep making choices without checking in with God, you'll end up stuck in cycles of regret, stress, and unnecessary pain. People say, well, I didn't think to pray about it because it seemed like a small decision. Listen, there are no small decisions when it comes to your destiny. The little things lead to the big things. One wrong turn can take you way off course. One rushed yes can tie you to years of struggle. One emotional move can cost you your peace, your money, your time, and even relationships. God wants to be invited into every area of our lives, our finances, our relationships, our careers, our dreams, our schedules, even our habits. He's not just our emergency contact, he's our daily guide. He's not just here to bail us out. He's here to lead us in. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, I thought it was a good idea, only to find out later it was the worst decision they ever made. Why? Because good doesn't always mean God. That's where we mess up. We look at something that makes sense in the natural, and we assume it must be the right path. But not everything that looks good is from God. The enemy's not stupid. He knows how to dress things up to look appealing. He'll give you a counterfeit opportunity that looks just like the real thing, hoping you'll grab it without seeking God first. And if you're led by your flesh, by pressure, or by the need to impress people, you'll fall for it every time. Some of us have made a whole lifestyle out of reacting instead of praying. We move fast, say yes too quick, commit to things God never told us to commit to, and then get mad when we're overwhelmed, anxious, or out of alignment. We need to stop trying to be the boss of our own lives. That job is already taken. If you're going to call Jesus your Lord, then you've got to let him lead. That means you don't make a move without consulting him. You don't make big decisions in the heat of emotion. You wait, you listen, you obey. And let me tell you, obedience isn't just about doing the right thing, it's about doing the God thing. It's about aligning with his will, not just doing what seems smart in the moment. Sometimes he'll lead you to do things that make no sense to your mind. He might say, don't take that job, even though it pays more. Or he might tell you to stay put when everything in you wants to run. But if you trust him, you'll find out that he sees things you don't. He knows what's around the corner. He knows what's up the road. And when you follow his voice, you avoid a lot of unnecessary pain. I remember a time when I was so sure about a decision that I didn't even ask God. It was a no-brainer, at least to me. I thought, this is obviously the right move. And guess what? It was a disaster. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And somewhere in the middle of it, I heard this still small voice in my heart saying, you never asked me. And wasn't an I told you so kind of voice, it was a gentle reminder, a loving correction. And that's when I realized how easy it is to drift from depending on God to depending on ourselves. We get a little success, a little confidence, and suddenly we think we've got it all figured out. But without God, we're just guessing. We're just gambling with our lives. It takes humility to admit that we don't know it all, that we need guidance, that we need wisdom beyond our own. But that's exactly where God meets us, in the place of surrender. In the moment we say, Lord, I don't want to move unless you move. I don't want to decide without your input. I don't want to keep wasting time cleaning up messes. I was never supposed to be in one of the biggest mistakes we make. And we've all done it, is that we go ahead and make a decision without consulting God, and then afterward, we try to drag him into it. We say things like, Lord, please bless this, but the truth is, we didn't ask him in the first place. We just assumed he'd tag along and support whatever we wanted to do. That's not partnership, that's manipulation. And it doesn't work. We treat God like he's some kind of cosmic stamp of approval. Like we can draw up the plan, sign our name on the dotted line, and then ask him to co-sign. That's backwards. God's not here to bless our agenda. He's here to fulfill his will in our lives. And if we keep dragging him into things he never told us to start, we'll keep running into closed doors, frustration, confusion, and disappointment. Let me put it plainly, you can't ignore God during the planning stage and then beg him to show up during the consequences. That's not faith, that's damage control. And God is not obligated to bless something he never built. You might get it started, you might get some momentum, you might even see some results, but if God didn't initiate it, the foundation's weak. It won't last. It'll wear you out, drain your joy, and leave you wondering why you feel stuck even though you're doing everything right. I remember hearing someone say, God will never finance a project he didn't authorize. And it stuck with me. We want heaven's resources for something God never even told us to do. We say, Lord, open the doors, send the money, bring the people, and God's saying, I never told you to build that. It's like trying to plug a lamp into a dead outlet and then blaming the lamp for not working. The power's not there because the connection's not there. We want God's favor without God's instruction. We want the benefits of obedience without actually obeying. And sometimes we even get frustrated with him for not blessing our mess. But think about it, why would God bless disobedience? Why would he put his name on something that didn't come from his heart? He loves us too much to encourage us to keep going in the wrong direction. He'll actually block what you're trying to force because he knows it'll hurt you in the long run. And I get it. It's hard to slow down. It's hard to wait for God's leading when everything around you is pushing you to act fast. Maybe the opportunity looks too good to pass up. Maybe you're tired of waiting and you figure, well, something's better than nothing. But if it's not from God, then it's not better. It's not safe. It's not stable. It's not going to bring you peace. And let me tell you, when you step outside of God's will, you step outside of his covering. That doesn't mean he abandons you, but it does mean you might face storms that were never meant to hit your life. You ever try to make something work that clearly isn't working, and yet keep pushing and praying, God, please make this succeed? Maybe it's a relationship, a business, a move, a partnership, even a ministry idea. But deep down, you know God didn't tell you to do it. You just wanted it so bad that you convinced yourself it must be right. And now that it's not going the way you hoped, you're pleading with God to fix it. But here's the truth, he's not obligated to bless what pride built. He'll redeem it, yes. He'll work it together for good, absolutely. But that doesn't mean he's going to bless your version of the plan when he had a better one all along. Sometimes we're not really asking for God's will, we're asking for his endorsement. We want him to validate our desires even when those desires are rooted in fear, insecurity, or impatience. But God doesn't rubber stamp selfish ambition. He blesses surrender. He blesses obedience. He blesses the work that flows from prayerful dependence and spiritual discernment. That's why it's so important to invite him in before you make the decision. Ask him to lead you, guide your motives, and reveal the truth about the opportunity in front of you. You can save yourself a whole lot of heartache by making one simple change. Stop launching things and then asking God to catch them. Flip it. Seek him first. Wait on him. Listen for his peace. And if he gives the green light, then you move forward. Because when God starts it, he'll sustain it. When it's his idea, he'll fund it. When it's his will, he'll open the right doors, connect the right people, and make it fruitful in ways you could never make happen in your own strength. But when it's all your timing, your striving, your decision without his direction, you might get something off the ground, but you're going to exhaust yourself trying to keep it in the air. One of the clearest ways you can tell if something is from God is this: there's peace, not perfection, not zero resistance, not everyone clapping and cheering you on. But deep down, no matter what happens, steady kind of peace. The kind that anchors you when everything around you feels shaky. The kind that doesn't always make logical sense, but you know it's God. You may still feel nervous. You may not know all the steps ahead, but when God is leading you, he gives you peace on the inside, even when there's pressure on the outside. Peace is one of the most underrated forms of divine confirmation. Everybody wants signs. Lord, give me a dream. Send me 3 doves. Make someone call me with the exact answer I need. And hey, God can speak through signs. He can speak any way he wants. But a whole lot of the time, he speaks through peace. That quiet assurance that says, this is the way, walk in it. That's why you've got to stop looking only at the outside, how things look, and start tuning into how things feel in your spirit. Because something can look right and feel totally wrong. And something can look crazy but carry the peace of God all over it. Now, I want to be real with you, peace doesn't mean easy. Just because God is leading you doesn't mean the path will be smooth. I don't confuse resistance with a red light. Sometimes there's spiritual opposition when you're going in the right direction. But even in the pushback, even in the stretching, even in the waiting, God gives peace. You don't panic, you don't spiral, you don't wake up every morning second-guessing your entire life. You're not tossed around like a wave in the wind. You've got that solid, still in the storm kind of peace. And that's how you know it's him. On the flip side, when you're outside of God's will or running ahead of his timing, you might try to fake peace. But you'll feel that restlessness. You'll feel that anxiety creeping in. You'll be up late trying to figure out how to make it work, trying to control everything, trying to cover all the angles. That's not peace, that's pressure. And pressure is a red flag. When God is truly in something, you don't have to force it. You don't have to beg people to support you, manipulate outcomes, or compromise your values just to keep things moving. God doesn't lead with pressure, he leads with peace. So many of us have ignored that inner warning sign. You know what I'm talking about, that feeling in your gut that says something's off. But instead of listening, we override it. We say, well, the money's good. The door opened, so it must be God. Everybody else thinks it's a great idea. And meanwhile, we're losing sleep. We've got knots in our stomach. We're walking around pretending like everything's fine, but inside we've got no peace. That's a problem. That's the Holy Spirit trying to protect you. That discomfort is a warning, not an inconvenience. Don't ignore it. When God leads, there's a steadiness that comes with it. You're not easily shaken. You're not driven by fear or desperation. You're not trying to prove something to people. You just know this is where God has me. This is what he's asked me to do. And there's rest in that. There's clarity. You can breathe. You're not running in circles trying to figure everything out. You're not leaning on your own understanding. You're trusting that if God brought you to it, he's got a plan to bring you through it. And that belief produces peace. Even when God tells you to do something bold, something scary, something that stretches you, he will give you the grace to walk it out falling apart. It's possible to do hard things in peace. You can be nervous and still have peace. You can feel the weight of the assignment and still have peace. That's how powerful God's presence is. It steadies your heart. It reminds you, I'm with you. And that alone is enough to keep moving forward. Some people chase opportunity. Some people chase approval. But wise people led people, they chase peace. They know that peace isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's discernment. It's spiritual intelligence. And when peace leaves, they pause. They don't just push through it. They stop and say, God, did I miss you somewhere? That kind of sensitivity saves you from a whole lot of unnecessary heartache. Because peace is not just a feeling, it's a compass. Peace points you toward the will of God, and the absence of peace is often God's way of saying, not this, not now, not here. One of the hardest things for people to deal with, especially believers who are genuinely trying to do what's right, is the delay. We pray, we believe, we even hear a word from God, and then nothing. Days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. And sometimes, let's be honest, months turn into years. And if we're not careful, we start thinking, maybe God changed his mind. Maybe I missed it. Maybe it's never going to happen. But let me tell you something you've got to get down into your spirit. Delayed does not mean denied. Just because something hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not going to. God is not in a rush like we are. He is never late, but he's also rarely early. It operates in perfect timing, his timing. And sometimes that timing includes a wait. That waiting period can feel like silence, but it's not. God is always working, even when he can't see it. The delay is not a punishment, it's preparation. It's development. It's protection. Sometimes the only thing standing between you and what God promised is time, because he's getting things ready, not just the circumstances, but you. We often want the promise without the process. We want the blessing without the breaking. But that's not how it works. God loves us too much to give us something we're not ready to handle. He's not going to promote you to a level you don't have the character to sustain. That business idea you've got, he might still be working on your integrity. That relationship you're praying for, he might still be healing your heart. That opportunity you want to walk through, he might be teaching you how to manage what you already have. If he gave you the blessing too soon, it would crush you, not bless you. Think about it. What if God answered every prayer the moment we prayed it? Some of us would be in relationships we had no business being in. We'd have jobs that pulled us away from his plan. We'd be surrounded by people who looked right, but had the wrong spirit. The delay is mercy. It's God stepping in and saying, not yet, I've got something better. Let me work on you a little more. Let Maine open the right door, not just any door. But we live in a culture that hates waiting. Everything is fast, instant. Now, when we don't see immediate results, we start questioning if we heard from God at all. We let doubt creep in. We compare our timeline to other people's. We see someone else get the promotion, get married, launch the ministry, build the platform, and we start feeling like God forgot about us. But listen, comparison will steal your confidence every time. God's not late and he's not distracted. He's personal. He's intentional. Your timeline is not broken, it's unique. And what he has for you is still on the way. Sometimes the delay is not just about what God is doing, it's about how we respond while we wait. That waiting season is a test of trust. It's a test of faith. It's easy to trust God when everything's moving fast. But can you trust him when it's slow? Can you believe when the doors stay closed? Can you still worship when the breakthrough hasn't come yet? That's where faith is refined. That's where spiritual maturity is built. The waiting doesn't weaken you, it trains you. It humbles you. It shapes you into someone who can handle the very thing you've been praying for. The enemy will try to whisper that you've been forgotten, that your prayers didn't work, that the delay means you did something wrong. But the devil is a liar. God doesn't abandon his promises. If he said it, he'll do it. But it may not look like what you expected. And it may not happen when you thought it would. Faith doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it feels like silence, but faith believes anyway. Faith says, even if it takes longer than I hoped, I still believe. Faith says, even if I don't understand the why or the when, I trust the who. And don't miss this, sometimes what feels like a delay is actually a redirection. God will close one door to guide you to a better one. He'll allow a delay in your plan to protect the integrity of his plan. What you call a setback might just be a setup. What you thought was a detour could actually be the straightest path to your destiny. You just can't see it from where you're standing. That's why we walk by faith and not by sight. You don't need to know everything, you just need to trust the one who does. One of the hardest things to do as a believer is to keep trusting God when you don't understand what's going on. When everything around you looks like it's falling apart, when people disappoint you, when doors close that you were sure were meant to open, it's easy to start questioning everything. You start asking, why God, why did this happen? Why did that fall through? Why did you let me go through? That if you love me, and let's be honest, we don't always get the answers we want. But that's where faith comes in. Faith says, God, I don't have to see the whole picture because I trust that you do. See, God doesn't just see the moment. He sees the beginning from the end. He's not operating on your limited timeline. You and I, we see what's right in front of us, what we're feeling today, what happened yesterday, what we're worried about tomorrow. But God, he's eternal. He's outside of time. He sees your whole life from start to finish like a complete masterpiece. We're over here looking at one puzzle piece, trying to figure out what it is and how it fits. And God's already got the entire picture laid out on the table. The problem is we make assumptions based on what we see right now. If something looks like a setback, we call it failure. If something feels painful, we assume it's bad. If something takes longer than we expected, we label it as forgotten. But we don't know what God is shielding us from. We don't know what he's arranging behind the scenes. You might think you're being overlooked, but God could be protecting you from a situation that would have derailed your purpose. You might think something was taken from you, but what if it was God removing something that was quietly destroying you? You've got to stop interpreting your life based on limited information. Because half the time, what you think is happening isn't what's really happening. You're looking at the surface. God is working in the depths. And if you could see what he sees, you'd stop panicking and start praising. You'd stop doubting and start resting. You'd stop begging for explanations and start standing in expectation. But we get impatient. We think, I don't understand it, it must not be right. But God never promised you would understand everything. He promised he would be with you through everything. Let me remind you, God is not confused. He is not surprised. He's not sitting in heaven wringing his hands over your situation. He's not trying to figure out a plan B because plan A didn't work out. He doesn't do backup plans, he is the plan. And he's already made provision for every problem, every delay, every twist and turn. What feels like a crisis to you is already accounted for in his blueprint. He doesn't just react, he orchestrates. He's ahead of you, not behind you. He's already in your future, making a way. Sometimes we want answers more than we want peace. But God doesn't always give explanations, he gives revelation. And he does that over time. You don't get the whole story all at once. You get it piece by piece, season by season, experience by experience. And each part of your journey is preparing you for what's next, even when it doesn't make sense. What looks like a detour could be the very thing that leads you to your destiny. That pain you went through might become the platform God uses to reach others. That disappointment might be the doorway to something better than you imagine. But you'll only see it if you keep walking with him. Now, that doesn't mean everything that happens to you is God's doing. People have free will. Life happens. The enemy attacks, but God is the master redeemer. He knows how to take what the enemy meant for evil and use it for good. He knows how to take the broken pieces of your life and create something beautiful out of it. He knows how to turn your tears into strength, your failures into wisdom, your delays into development. But you won't always see that right away. You've got to trust him when it's dark. You've got to lean into him when the road makes no sense. You've got to remind yourself, I may not see what he's doing, but I know he's doing something. And isn't that what faith is? Trusting God when the path is unclear. Believing he's good when life doesn't feel good. Holding on when your hands feel empty. It's not easy. It's not always pretty. But it's powerful. Because when you stop needing all the answers, you make room for real trust. And when you trust God, even without understanding, you position yourself to walk in peace, even in the middle of the unknown. God doesn't ask you to figure it all out. He just asks you to follow him. And the only way to follow is to let go of the illusion that you have to see the whole picture to move forward in faith. If there's one thing that can mess us up faster than anything else, it's getting ahead of God. We get a glimpse of what he wants to do in our lives. And instead of waiting on his timing, we take off running like we're in some kind of spiritual race. We don't even wait for the next instruction. We just grab the first piece of the vision and try to build the whole house with it. We act like we've got it all figured out, but in reality, we're building with blueprints we don't even fully understand yet. Let me tell you something, God is not slow, but he is intentional. He moves with purpose. He's not anxious. He's not rushed. He's not sitting in heaven shouting, "Hurry up, my child." That's us. That's our mindset. We live in a world of fast food, instant downloads, and overnight shipping. We want everything now, and we expect God to operate on our schedule, but God doesn't work like Amazon Prime. He's not in the business of convenience. He's in the business of transformation. And transformation takes time. When you get ahead of God, you start operating in your own strength. You start making moves based on assumption instead of instruction. And when you do that, you might still get results, but they won't be the right results. Just because something works doesn't mean it's God's will. The enemy can offer you open doors too. Not every opportunity is a divine opportunity. Not every green light is from heaven. Some things you have to stop and ask God, is this from you? Because moving too fast without confirmation can put you in places you were never meant to be. I've seen people launch into relationships because they didn't want to wait any longer. They prayed, but then they rushed. They didn't give God room to speak or move. They wanted the blessing, but not the process. And then 6 months later, they're dealing with heartbreak, betrayal, confusion, and they're asking God, why did you let this happen? But truthfully, he didn't tell them to run into it in the first place. They got ahead of him. And anytime you get ahead of God, you're also stepping outside of his grace for that moment. You're entering territory without the covering. That's a dangerous place to be. The same thing happens in business, in ministry, in calling. We get a prophetic word, we get a vision, we hear a whisper from God, and we think it means now. But sometimes God shows you the destination without showing you the timeline. Abraham got a promise and waited decades before he saw the fullness of it. David was anointed king as a teenager, but didn't sit on the throne for years. Jesus knew who he was at 12, but his public ministry didn't start until he was 30. So what makes us think that every promise we hear has to happen this month? God often moves slower than we expect, but always better than we imagine. And staying in step with him requires discipline. It requires surrender. It requires learning how to sit still when your flesh wants to run. It means saying, God, I trust your timing more than I trust my own urgency. And let's be honest, that's hard. Waiting is hard, especially when you feel like you're ready, especially when people around you are moving ahead. But spiritual maturity is knowing the difference between preparation and promotion. God will never promote you before you're prepared, and you don't get to set your own clock for it. There's a rhythm to walking with God, a divine pace, a spiritual cadence. And when you get in sync with that rhythm, life flows differently. You make decisions with confidence, not confusion. You move in purpose, not pressure. You have peace, not panic. But that only happens when you're walking with God, not running out ahead of him. Some of us need to stop, take a breath, and say, Lord, I've been trying to do this in my own strength. I've been moving on assumptions instead of instructions. Show me how to slow down and sync up with you. The truth is, running ahead doesn't get you there faster. It often gets you off track. You might still arrive, but with more baggage than you were meant to carry. You might still get there, but with more bruises and breakdowns than necessary. God's way is not just about where he's taking you, but how he takes you there. And when you stay in step with him, he not only leads you, he equips you. He teaches you. He transforms you in the process. You're not just going to something, you're growing into someone. And that growth happens in the step by step, not the sprint.